all-time favorite photographers, Hiroshi Watanabe. I met Hiroshi, I think close to 20 years ago. Well, at least I met his work then. And I was completely mesmerized by his photographs, work that still to this day is expertly crafted in the darkroom. It turns out that Hiroshi and I live within close proximity to each other in Los Angeles, though we don't see each other enough. I look at his photographs every day because they line the halls of right outside my office. I can still remember walking the aisles of Photo LA back in the day when it was a big thing, and his work was everywhere. And at one of those events, he introduced me very kindly to his gallery in Austin. And months later, they gave me a solo exhibition. And I think about his generosity of spirit in that gesture of sharing his legacy with me. It meant so much to me at that time. A few years back, Hiroshi and I did a project together where we both took portraits of each other. We both hate having our photo taken. And he arrived to the set with a giant white horse's head and a doctor's jacket. And we did the shoot in his studio, quote unquote, atrium. And then he decided he would like to go to Hollywood Boulevard and stand with all the weird characters, the Batman, Spider-Man, on Hollywood Boulevard and have his portrait taken amidst all of that. And we stood there, and as I photographed, crowds formed around him and wanted their picture taken with Hiroshi in the horse's head, though they had no idea who he was. But at that moment, I just knew how much we had in common. So thank you, Hiroshi. Now, this is a little bit of a long bio, but I am going to make my best effort because he's had quite a remarkable career. I counted 14 books. His work is in numerous collections. Hiroshi was born in Sapporo, Hokkaido, Japan, and graduated from the Department of Photography at Nihon University in 1975. He then moved to Los Angeles, where he worked as a production coordinator for Japanese television commercials, and later co-founded a Japanese coordination service company. He received an MBA from UCLA Anderson Business School in 1993. 2 years later, however, his early interest in photography was revived and he started to travel worldwide, extensively photographing what he found intriguing at the moment. As of 2000, he has worked full-time at his photography. After he produced 5 self-published books, his first collection to be published conventionally was I See Angels Every Day, a monochrome portraits of patients and scenes from the San Lazaro Psychiatric Hospital in Quito, Ecuador. This work won Japan's 2007 Photo City Seiga Mihara Award for professional photographers. In 2006, he won a Critical Mass Award from Photolucida, resulting in a publication of his monograph findings in 2007. In 2006 and 2007, he traveled to North Korea, and his book documenting the experience, Ideology of Paradise, was published in Japan. And with that work, he won first prize in the Santa Fe Center Project Competition in 2008. In 2009, he received a commission from the San Jose Museum of Art to document from an artist's perspective subjects of his choice relating to the city's Japantown. He decided to photograph artifacts from the Japanese internment camps established during the Second World War. And all images from this project were purchased by the museum and exhibited in 2011. In 2010, he was chosen as one of 14 artists invited to photograph Venice, Italy for a project called Real Venice. In 2013, he was invited to participate in Bull City Summer in Durham, North Carolina, a project inspired by the 25th anniversary of the movie Bull Durham. Both of those exhibitions resulted in, both of those projects resulted in exhibitions. In 2014, his photographs of artifacts from the Tule Lake Japanese internment camp were the centerpiece of the exhibit, Art of the Survival, Enduring the Turmoil of Tule Lake, at the Favell Museum in Klamath Falls, Oregon. And this exhibition is still currently on tour. In 2016, he received a grant from the Pollock Krasner Foundation. I just want to say thank you so much for being here, Hiroshi. It's such a treat, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say. So welcome, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, and you know what?
Okay.
I forgot to say that Hiroshi is more than happy to answer any questions along, as he speaks. So I will be watching the chat. So if he said, if you have a particular question about an image and want to know more, just put it in the chat and I will shoot it out to Hiroshi during his talk.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Aline, I will try my best to speak about my work. I'm gonna put the share screen. So first, I think I should tell you what I should tell you is that I don't do a lot of talks like this. In fact, I think the very first time I did the talk in front of any audience was with Aline. She invited me to speak at the event called, I think that was called Julia Dean photographic workshops. At that time, it was called, before it became LAACP. And it was titled as 4 Evenings with the Fine Art Photographers. That was back in 2009. So it's 12 years ago. And I don't remember the other 3 photographers that you did. Do you remember, Aline?
I think Robert Flick was one, and Tierney Guerin, and they were all significant Los Angeles photographers. And I felt like we were like the first, we started those conversations long before anyone else was doing them. So, but it was, I think we did it at A&I or something.
Right.
I can't remember, but yeah.
So since then, I think when I spoke was about maybe like 2 or 3 times in US. And the other time I did a speech on China, Japan, and Brazil. So I've, did only small number of talks in front of the people. So, so I will try my best because I don't teach, and I'm not so used to about talking, to talk about my work, but I'm going to do my best. So when I did a talk back in 2009, I had a similar PowerPoint presentation, and 2 days ago I spoke with Aline, and she asked me if I'm going to show the same picture that I did. That was a picture of myself as a baby and a boy. And I didn't remember the pictures, but she asked me, and so I decided to show it to you just so that you can refresh my memory. So here it is. Okay. So that's a picture. Can you see them?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So that's my baby picture, my father, and with my sister. And what I said at that time was that this baby picture, when I was looking at when I was a little boy, I believe that was my sister's picture. So I used to say to my parents that my sister, and they said, no, it's you. And I wasn't sure why they were so sure about that was me at that time. So that's a small joke. Sorry about that. Okay, so that's that. So the way I started photography is that, back in 1995, I was already 45 years old. That was after I did I run a production company, a coordinating company for Japanese TV commercials. So I did the work for 20 years. And then when I was 45 years old, I decided to go back to photography. So I started traveling with camera and taking pictures of the different locations. So for instance, this was in Tahiti. And the other picture is, this was in New York. So these are the landscapes I photograph. So as I travel, I see things and I take pictures. I go back to my studio and develop film and make a print. So this is 1999. And this one was taken in Midway Atoll. That's right in the very middle of the Pacific Ocean between the United States and Japan. That's where the historical big battle occurred back in many years ago during World War II. So that's the reason I went there, and I ended up with this picture. And this was one in India. And this one was I photographed in Ecuador. It's a cockfight birds that was in the cage. And this one is also I photographed that in Ecuador, in Quito, Ecuador. So I did all these landscape kind of things as I traveled. And so I gathered all these images and self-published a book called The Veiled Observations and Reflections. And I did a show in a gallery called White Room Gallery many, many years ago. They don't exist anymore, but that's my very first publication, well, self-published small book that I did. And then I also went to Japan and I tried the same approach to photograph various landscapes in Japan. So basically I walk around a lot and with the camera Hasselblad and take a picture of the things that captured my eyes. This is another one in Tokyo. This one is also in Tokyo. It's a baseball field. And this one is actually in Spain, Barcelona, Spain. And so I gathered all these photographs, and as Aline said, I won with these images the book award from Critical Mass, and then they published those images as title findings. That was back in 2007. I think there's one thing I should tell you is that I don't feel comfortable explaining my images. So I'm gonna pretty much say all the facts that I remember. I cannot speak too much about the philosophical aspects of it, or but I can speak about technical things and what I felt. I actually don't think about it too much, those things. When I photograph, I kind of just, blind-minded, walk around taking pictures and that kind of things. And I don't really know the reason why I took certain pictures, but something that captures my eye. That's basically my honest aspect of my work. And then during the traveling around the world, I started photographing the people. So I started taking pictures of the kind of formal photo portrait of pictures. So this was one in Kenya. This was India. This one was in Ecuador. And I put this self-publishing book I titled Faces Volume 1 because I put the volume 1 because at that time I planned to do more of the portrait series of different subjects. And the very first one I did was I stumbled upon a psychiatric hospital in Quito, Ecuador. So I went to this hospital. I was staying in a hotel, and I was just looking outside on the hill. There was a white Spanish large colonial building that I became kind of interested. So I asked around what the building was, and they told me that it was mental hospital. And so I decided to go there. So through people that I knew at the time in Ecuador, someone arranged for me to go and to the psychiatric hospital, and I was able to take a photograph. So I did that portrait series within the hospital. So this is the pictures. This person was actually not a patient of mental hospital, but she was in the hospital only because she was blind, and her parents abandoned her, and she had no place to go on the street. And then the hospital took her just so that she has she can have a place to stay and have something to eat. And ever since, she was living in that hospital for many, many years. And but she's, when she plays guitar, and she's capable of doing anything that people can do, but she cannot leave the hospital because she has no other means of survival. So with those images, a photograph that I made, I published a book. I titled "I See Angels Every Day." This is something that one of the patients told me or said to me. So I decided to use that as a title of the book that was published in Japan. And then I also did another portrait series in Japan. And so I put it as Faces Volume 2. And these are the kabuki actors in Japan. But they are not professional actors. They don't do this for a living, but they are located in a small town in the middle of Japan, and they have a theater. And these people are just regular people but they practice and perform kabuki on an annual basis. So I found those, the kabuki company, and I photographed them. I did a portrait series. This is the backstage of the theater. So after I did kabuki actors, I decided to do dolls. Bunraku is the same play, same music, and same setup, but instead of human actors, they use dolls. So puppet play is what it is, but the story-wise, it's pretty much the same, but it's one of those. So there's the kabuki, there's a bunraku, and there's a no. Those are the three major classical or traditional theaters that exist in Japan. So I decided to do the bunraku as well. So I found these dolls at the old elementary school, not too far away from the kabuki theaters that I photographed. And so I treated the puppets as a human being and made a portrait of them. So was my next Faces series. And then, as I said, I did the third one, which is no masks. And that I found them in a very southern part of Japan, in Kyushu, a city called Nobeoka. And again, I did a portrait series. The one thing I did was I didn't want to make a typical mask pictures, because most of the no mask photographs they put a mask on the wall, on the flat wall, and then photograph from the frontal, so frontal the portrait. I didn't want to do that because I wanted to make a portrait series. So what I did was and there also, this is a very, very old no masks. It's probably like 300 years old. So they didn't want me to touch it, of course. So they have to have someone to handle it with the gloves. And what I did was I brought a mannequin to that stage. And then I put it in a black cloth. And then I asked them to put the masks on the mannequin so that I could treat them as more three-dimensional, so that I can take photographs just like I was taking someone's portrait. So with those things, kabuki and bunraku and no masks, I did a show, the first show in New York back in 2005. So this is just one wall of the gallery. And I also did the same in Tokyo. And then back in 2006 and 2007, I was in Japan for some time. I spend a lot of time in Japan, especially in the summertime. I go there every year. And at that time, Japan I was bombarded by all this news about North Korea, about the Japanese citizen kidnapped by North Korean government's spies, and then taken back to North Korea to so that and they forced those people who were kidnapped to teach the Japanese to North Korean spies. That was what I was hearing. So and I became kind of interested in that in the news. So I decided to go to North Korea to photograph. And of course, in the beginning, a lot of people I talked to told me not to go there because if I go there, I'll be kidnapped as well, and it's too dangerous. But I did find a small travel agency run by North Korean in Tokyo, and he was trying to put together the tourists to go to send them to North Korea so that they can make some money. And I told them I'm a photographer. I want to take pictures, and I will want to go there by myself because I don't want to be other people. Because my main goal was to take photograph of in North Korea. And he said he will do whatever he can. And I just waited about a month, and he all of a sudden called me, and he told me he got a visas to go there. So that's how I went there. So I was able to take those pictures. So I had those pictures, and with those pictures, I got another book competition. I won a first prize with the center's project competition. So with that, I published that book back in 2008. Okay, so now it became the next year, 2008. I was in Japan, and I spent more time in Japan at that time because my wife was pregnant with my first son. I had two daughters from previous marriage, but this one is I knew that was a boy, and my wife wanted to have a baby delivered in Japan. So we decided to go there and just wait until he comes out to the world. So I had a lot of time in Japan. And so I decided to do something, another portrait series, and I started thinking about what else, I can do in terms of the portrait. And I remember in my childhood, there was a monkey performer that they came to a city, a street, and did all these tricks and performance. So I thought maybe I can do the monkey portrait. So that's a reason I started doing a monkey portrait with this. Although when I was a child, that was kind of a common scene to see in a Japanese street, but they don't exist anymore. But they do have a theater, a small number of monkey theaters in Japan. And I went to one of them and asked them to let me photograph those monkeys. So they are all performing monkeys. Okay, so this one is, the book was not published, but the 4i made a portfolio box for this series. So that was back in 2009. They did this portfolio box. I don't think this exists anymore, I'm sure. Okay, so on the same day, or same year, 2008, I did the monkey series, as well as this, the love doll, sex doll series. I found this company who makes sex dolls. It's a life-size doll for men who want to have a company, but without having to deal with the real human relationships. They purchased these dolls and have it in their residence, I guess. I don't know what they do, but so I heard about the company, so I approached them, and again I did a portrait series with those dolls. Those life-size doll, and it's heavy, just like the same weight as a human, regular. So in order to carry, you have to have a very, you have to be very strong, because it's like carrying a dead person. And, but it feels like a real person. And so it's really, really, you can't really see the difference. So I took those pictures, and let's see if yeah, so this is how I take the pictures. And to put the book, I put the love poem. That's actually just a picture of a bar that I found in Japan. It's named Love Poem. So I just used that as a cover, the book. And so one thing I did differently is this time is that after I took pictures of these dolls, I decided that I would take a real person as well and mix the pictures together. So some are dolls, but some are actually a model that I hired. And I hired, makeup people and stylists and all that stuff. And then I put up same type of costumes, and so I took both real person and the dolls, and I kind of mixed together to see, to make it more. I hope it was more interesting, because that will show what is fake and what is real, kind of things. And when I did the show in Japan with this, most of the people ask me if it's a real person or dolls, and they always get interested or curious about if it's a girl, if it's a boy. I'm sorry, if it's a real human or a doll, and so
Hiroshi,
that's yeah.
Hiroshi, are any of these 6 a real person?
Yes, there's one real person.
Can I guess?
Yes, I'm sure you can tell.
The blonde.
This one, right?
The
one
blonde.
on the top on the right side.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a real person. So the interesting thing was when I speak to the people who's looking at the pictures, they always ask me if it's a real or a doll. So when I answered them that it was both, that some are real, some are the dolls, most of the people, once they know, they can pick, they can see the difference. But until then, they're not sure. So I thought that aspect was quite interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the book. And the next project I did was Real Venice. That was the organization that were trying to help Venice from the water issues and the other issues that the Venice was facing at that time. And so they wanted to raise money. So they contacted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So 14 photographers around the world to come to the Venice and photograph as they say. So I was one of them. So I went there, spent about maybe 2 weeks or so. But I did portraits. Instead of taking pictures of the buildings and the landscapes, I decided to do the portrait series. So, so these are the pictures. And again, I did a similar approach to that I did with the Kabuki actors. I found the comedic theater who dressed like them. And I asked them to be a model and took pictures of them. One thing I should point out is that, so you can see this very easily, is that I try to photograph those portraits on the street or in front of the theaters, but because it's Venice and it's very crowded, there's lots of tourists, and so the people start gathering. So I was not able to take a picture of the model with the Venice background because all these people, start piling up in the back, and so there's no way to control. So I chartered a large boat, and so I took the boat out with the model and just go around the canal so that I don't have the crowd issues. So that's how I did the portrait series. So you see at the bottom, you see this. Oh, so this is boat at the bottom. So this is the boat that I hired. There's in the background, there's the models, and the crew. So with that, they sold all these pictures, and that money went to this organization. And then the next project I did was the San Jose Museum of Arts asked me to do some kind of project in relation to it's Japantown. And so I went there and couldn't find anything that I was interested in. But I did find small local museum, Japanese American museum. And they were closed at that time, but they had lots of small items that was kind of piled up in their garage. So I went to the garage and pulled out the items from those boxes and photographed them one by one. So they are from the time of the concentration camp in that area. And so those are the images. And then, so this another set of pictures. So this one is from the museum garage, the small items that I photographed. And then I was speaking with the director of the gallery. And then he started telling me that in Tui Lake, in the north part of California, there was a camp. And he told me the story that when he left, most of the people were not able to carry it out of things. So because, it was temporary residence for them. And so they can carry only things in the suitcase. So what they did was they went outside of the camp, dug a hole and buried most of them, or they burnt them so that they don't have to carry what they couldn't carry anyway. So when they heard the story, I decided that I will go there and try to dig up all this the artifacts from the ground. So this is a set of the things that I found in the ground. So I was just using my bare hands, dig up things, and then photograph them one by one. So that's why there's a lot of glass materials, and there's a lot of them that was disfigured because of they put in hot fire. So those are the items.
Wow.
And so the museum gave me a show to do the with those artifacts. So that's what I did in 2011. So this is the wall. Okay. See. And then a few years passed. So I was kind of busy at that time because of this new set of children that I have to raise. So I didn't have a lot of time to photograph. I spent a few years without taking pictures, except my wife asked me to take pictures of the family, typical family pictures, you know, snapshot of the happy family kind of scenes. So I did not carry my Hasselblad for a few years. And, but I did have this digital camera that I was taking pictures of family pictures. So I spent like 5 years, I think, with this small camera. And one day I was going through all these photographs that I took during those years. And in my computer, I started seeing between those happy family photographs, there was pictures that I took that I didn't remember, but something that catches my eye. And I realized those are the images that I saw when during that time, that I had to take a picture with this camera. So with that small camera, this is a small digital camera, I made lots of photographs. And so those are the pictures. I show them to Daylight's publisher that I know. And they asked me what I'm doing, so I just show those pictures, and they decide to publish the book. So these are the images. So those are the pictures. And then now a few years passed, I decided to do an illustration of my childhood favorite book, Kwaidan. So that story is about 100 years old. It was written by Rafka Diohan, who was born in Greece, raised in Ireland. And so his mother was a Greece person, and then his father was an Ireland army officer. And so they divorced, and then he was raised by an aunt in Ireland, very strict Catholic, I think. And he wasn't happy. Then after the school, he moved to the United States. He became a writer for a newspaper, and he started, seeing different things. He was interested in different cultures, and he was sent to Japan by a publisher in the United States, and went to Japan. And then he really liked what he has seen, and he decided to stay there. And he eventually married a Japanese woman and had children. And he became a teacher, and then he became a professor of Tokyo University, which is a very prestigious university in Tokyo. And before he passed away, he published a book called Kwaidan. It's a ghost story that as he was traveling with his wife, he had a lot of strange, scary stories as they traveled to Japan. So he decided to publish those stories for the American or English-speaking audience. So he published the book. Then he passed away, and that book became kind of lukewarm success, but not too so big. So I don't think there's not too many people knows about him actually in the United States, but that his English writing was translated to a Japanese language. And then, so Japanese people start reading the book, and that book became very, very popular. And it was, so everybody knows those stories in Japan because of the books that he did. That was originally intended for the American or the English-speaking audience, and written in English, but ended up with very popular in Japan. And so when I was growing up, I had in the middle school, I was studying English and Japanese, English, and then my teacher brought me this book called Kwaidan. And the reason he did that is because the book was written in English, but it was also a Japanese translation. So we could read both books together next to each other. So, English and Japanese, English. That's how I learned English. And then I was very, very strongly interested and really liked the stories. So I wanted to do this book for a long time. And so I was trying to find a way. And then luckily, I had a grant from Polak Krasna Foundation in New York. And they funded the project for me, so I was able to finish the book. So I did spend maybe like 3-4 years. Each time when I go to Japan, I put the crew together, find the models, and it was quite interesting experience because that was putting together, meaning making almost like a small movie in a way, because you need to have makeup person and everything. So it was a good, interesting project. So anyway, so I did this book. So those are the images. So all scenes are based on the stories. And then 2 years ago, there's a pandemic, COVID-19, and everything stopped. So I stopped. And so there's no more project that came in. And so I was unemployed and there's no work. So, but I was actually happy because that gave me a good excuse for me to stay with my family. So I was able to spend a lot of time with my children. So I kind of became lazy in a way. So that's how I am right now. But since I had a lot of time, and I decided to go back to the old negatives that I made. So those are the time I concentrated in the time when I started photography, when I became interested in photography, when I was like 19 years old, and I moved to Los Angeles when I was 24. So like within those 5 years, I had a lot of negatives that I took, which I never printed. So I decided to go back to the negatives and then went through the negatives and start printing all the photographs. And so these are the images that I did. So I showed it to Andy at the Dark Spring Press, and he said he wants to publish it. So next year, he promised that he would publish a book with these images. So these photographs, kind of I experimented. So it's a totally different time frame, different approach, but I was trying to learn photography, and I was also trying to come up with different techniques and approach. So hopefully there'll be some interest in this work as well. So that's where I am right now. So.
Want me to take you out of screen?
Yeah, yes. Okay, so that's where I am. So if you have any questions or comments, I would like to hear from you.
I'm not seeing anything in the chat just because my internet went out, and when I came back, there was nothing in the chat. So if you have asked a question, please just shout it out. But I have a couple questions first, Hiroshi.
Sure.
You have a consistent style through everything you shoot. And some of that is your process in the darkroom. You tend, I think you're toning with a certain kind of toner that adds just a little flavor. But as a fellow square format shooter, I am just always blown away what you can get into that square. And there's just such a unique way of seeing the world. I don't know, can you speak to that at all? Like your darkroom techniques and what you're drawn to as an artist?
Okay, in terms of darkroom technique, I don't know if you can call it technique, but I pretty much do it as everyone else does. So technically speaking, I use Hasselblad. Okay, and the film I use is a Tri-X 220, which the Kodak stopped making almost like 10 years ago. And I still have some film left. So when the Kodak announced they're no longer making that film, I think they still make 120, but not 220. They stopped like 10 years ago. But I was a 220 shooter. I had a Hasselblad 220 magazine. That means that I could take 24 pictures per frame per roll. And so I called up and all the Photoshops that I could find in US, and I bought everything that I could find. So I had I don't know. I forgot the rules, but I had 2 large boxes of film of just one kind, and I put it in the refrigerator. So I'm still using the film, and so when I use it, it's in the freezer. So I will go to the freezer, and then take out the film. You make about 10 rolls or so, and then put it in the refrigerator, and then put that in for about a week. And then when it's not kind of not frozen anymore, then I will take out from the refrigerator, and I put it back on a room temperature. Then I use. So you have to have some kind of system. I don't know if it's true, but I was told by someone that if you freeze the film, it can last almost forever. You cannot just put it on the refrigerator. But the freezer, you can pretty much have it, restored for almost entirely. Well, so that's what I'm doing, and so far I don't have any problems. So I think it's true. Anyway, so I use the film, and then when I develop the film, I go to the darkroom and print. I used to use Kodak Polymax Fine Art. They don't make that anymore, of course. And then so I'm using either fold paper. And then I use, after fixing, I tone the prints. And the prints I tone with is sepia toner, Kodak sepia toner. And I don't know if the Kodak makes that anymore, actually. But I think there's another chemical company, I forgot the name. Anyway, they're supposed to be pretty much the same. So I use that with the sepia toner. Only thing I do different is that I dilute the breach. So sepia toner has a breach part, and then there's a toner part. So when you breach, first you breach the print, and then became like a very bright, very dull print. And then when you put the print in a toner, then they will become like a brownish toner. What I do different is that I dilute the breach part, probably like almost like 8 times dilution. So I have a lot of, I make a lot of breach that I have to throw out because it doesn't last long time. But then what I'm trying to say is that I only tone very, very slightly so that only highlight become sepia, but the dark part, the black part of the print has no change. So it became like a two-tone toning process. So it has, that's the way I kind of get the depth of the image. So I do that all the time. And yeah.
So beautiful. So it seems like the first project you worked on in color was the Korea work. And
yes.
I remember when I first started shooting in color, I felt like I had to re-see, like I had to really understand the world not in black and white. And I'm kind of wondering if you went through a similar experience of now shooting in color.
As long as I know if it's a color film or digital camera or the black on the white film, I don't know. Somehow I see that when I look at the finder, when I'm taking picture of the black and white in the black and white film, I kind of see that in the black and white. I don't know how, actually. I never think about it, intentionally, but when I know I'm taking black and white pictures, I see the image in black and white, even when I'm looking at the whatever in front of my eye. So I don't know. I mean, it's kind of the mindset, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can relate to that.
Yeah.
Lisa McCord in the audience, I'm sure can also. One person in the audience has asked for you to talk about some of the artists and photographers who have influenced you. And please put your questions in the chat.
Okay. When I started learning photography, when I was, when I studied photography in a university in Tokyo, I had some idols that I admired during that time. And that's the reason I actually moved to the United States, because almost all photographers that I dreamt of becoming someone like them was all American photographers. Robert Frank, Richard Avedon, let's see, those are the people who are almost in New York photographers, and some are fashion photographers. And Diane Arbus is, of course, one of them. So I dreamt of being like them. So that's why I wanted to move to the United States. That's why I got this job just to come to the United States. So those are my, young, when I was young, that's who I wanted to become like. And right now, photographers that I paying attention is, let's see, Nada Kander, I think it's called. Yeah, he's another Canada. I love his work. He's, he has a very strong work. I also like Raymond Meeks. I like Hiroshi Sugimoto. Same first the name, but a different last name. Unluckily. What else? Those are the people that came to my mind.
You know, I think your work is such a beautiful example of someone who goes to other places yet finds similarities around the world, like in your findings work, where you've really managed to make us look differently and see other cultures differently without needing to show us too much about the culture. You've showed us a detail. And I think, especially for those who do a lot of travel photography, I think your work is such a beautiful example of finding, it's almost like you have found poetry wherever you go, and visual poetry. And that doesn't necessarily have to speak to the place. It's just to that moment and space. So that's one thing I love about the work that you've shot all over. And of course, you did that amazing project in the United States too. I mean, that photograph at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial is just incredible. Years ago, Hiroshi was part of the White Room Gallery in Los Angeles, and the gallerist had this brilliant idea of pairing artists with another artist in the gallery. And Hiroshi was paired with Ken Rosenthal, and they had to swap negatives. And Hiroshi had to print Ken Rosenthal's negative, and Ken Rosenthal had to print Hiroshi's negative. And both Hiroshi and Ken had very distinctive ways of working in the darkroom. And that was one of the most fascinating shows that spoke to artists. I don't know if you want to talk about that at all, the experience of having someone else's negative and then having to reinterpret it in your own voice.
What I can say about it is that, first of all, I had a choice of the other photographers that I swapped negative with. And I really liked Ken's work. And he has a different style from mine, quite different. So that's the reason I thought maybe if I work with Ken, we can come up with an image. So he made the prints with his darkroom technique with my negative, and I did the same with his. And I think we are both happy with the result. That was quite interesting.
Yeah,
experience.
That was a great show. Yeah.
I wish someone else would do that, except that nowadays, because it's a digital camera, so there's no negative, positive relationship.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, do we have any other questions for Hiroshi? Don't hold back. He's here.
I'm sorry that I didn't speak too much about the philosophy or thinking about images, but as I said, I'm not good at explaining things. Actually, all the photographers that I like, I don't know, I don't necessarily heard what they say, but I like them because of the images that they make. And so sometimes it's necessary to explain, and I think I should do that. But a lot of times when I photograph, you don't think about those things at all. I mean, I don't have any agenda to express or to tell other people. I like action of the taking photographs and making images. So that's the reason I still work in the darkroom, because each time when I see an image comes up in a tray, that really excites me. And I think it's not like, I have a reason to tell, or the story to tell, or trying to impress, or press upon certain opinions, but just a pure of making things, and that's my honest approach. So,
I think that was truly the case when we both started in photography. We were really looking almost at singular images and not worrying about necessarily creating a project and having an artist statement and having an agenda. And that has really sort of changed photography a bit. So that's really interesting, your perspective on that. We do have a question about how you direct your subjects. And oftentimes you are shooting on location, sometimes not knowing the subject beforehand. So right. What are your thoughts on that?
You're talking about the landscape or no, the portrait series?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, well, portrait, I have some, well, first of all, I always make a project based on the group of people, not one individual, well, most of the time. So, kabuki actors or the people in the Venice, they are all in the same group. And so I approached the group with the request of the taking pictures, portrait pictures of those people. And so when I do that, I have certain images in mind, although I don't necessarily tell them. But I also, keep my mind open. So when I go to the location, I don't make a setup except the Kwaidan work, the Japanese ghost story. Those are based on the stories. So I have to make I have to set up the scene. Other than that, the portrait work itself is, I kind of like, just go there and the photograph, with the group of people. And a lot of times I see things that I didn't expect. And, I think that makes me more excited. I'm excited about all those things, because when I try to set up a thing, a scene, when I look back or look on the side, I see something more interesting, and then I have to take a picture of those things that I didn't expect. So I don't know if it's good answer on that.
And Doris, you can always get those love dolls, and I'm sure those were equally difficult to photograph. Right. Maybe more so, actually, to make them lifelike. Two questions for you. Where do you live and what's next?
I live in Los Angeles, west part of Los Angeles. I live near UCLA campus in Westwood. I have another small house, a work house on Pico and Overland, very close to, just a block away from the new Google building on, used to be a West Side Pavilion. So that's where I spend most of the time. And I also go to Japan every year with my family. And I sent my children to a Japanese school there because summer vacation in the US is very long compared to Japanese, of course. And so they go there for about 6 weeks to Japanese school. I thought they will hate that, doing that every year, but for some reason, they actually like that. For instance, this year, I suggested that we don't go to Japan because of the pandemic, and they were very, very disappointed. They insisted that they want to go to Japan and spend time with their friends in Japanese school. So I don't know why, because if it's me, I would complain that I have to go to two schools, but they don't mind, and they actually love doing that. So, so I spend in Japan every 2 months. I mean, every 2 months every year, and so actually that works quite well because at that time, before I go to Japan, if I do a project in Japan, I should start setting up in the spring, contacting people, and also when I do a show in Japan, I will make the plans. So I will use that time, productively. And yeah, so yeah, I live in Los Angeles.
And what's next is his book that is coming out with Dark Spring Press.
So I have to make a confession, and that is I don't have any project except all the negatives that I showed you. That is because so a year and a half ago the pandemic started, and I wasn't sure how dangerous it was, how serious it was, and I wanted to travel, and I wanted to keep going with the photography, but at the end, I decided that I will stay with my family and not go anywhere. And I don't see people. So for a year and a half, I was just going back and forth between my studio on West Los Angeles, my house in Westwood, back and forth every day. I leave the house in the morning as if I'm going to the office. When I get to this studio, I'm by myself, and then I spend time, doing things. But I couldn't go anywhere else too much, and but I think I became too comfortable doing that because I had a good excuse not to do anything, right? So it was my kind of mistake. So right now, I don't have any urge to go anywhere and to do it. But at the same time, at the bottom of my heart, I feel like urge to do something, because I'm still living and I want to do. So I'm trying to find some good project that I can work on. But as I said, I'm unemployed. So yeah. So that's my next project is you don't have. I'm sorry to tell you that, but.
I think we can all relate. And one final question, can you talk about the image in the ghost story with the writing on the body?
Oh, that's Mimineshi Hoichi. It's earless Hoichi is the name of the short story in the book. So Kwaidan has like 12 short stories, the book of short stories. One of them is called Mimineshi Hoichi, which means earless Hoichi. It's a story of a young monk who was fooled by a ghost, and he was put to the graveyard to play his biwa, which is like a guitar, in front of the grave. And then his priest, or the monk, the older one, with the head of the shrine, found out that he was actually fooled by a ghost. So the thinking was that if he writes all these prayers on his body, then the ghost will not be able to see him. And so before the evening falls, he did that, but he did so, he was hurrying so much that he forgot to write the prayers on his ear, one ear. So when the ghost came, the ghost saw only one ear kind of floating in the air. So they decided to just take what I say to the air. So the ghost ripped the ear out of his face, and that's how he became ERS. That's kind of the basic story. So, but that, you know, the writing those, the prayers, I think that there's another word for that, Buddhist word. Anyway, I'm just calling the prayers, but when I did the photograph, so I hired a makeup artist, or kabuki makeup artist. There's a special kind of makeup artist who does a kabuki plays. And we started about noon. We rented the house, old house, and we started noon. And I asked him how long it would take to write. And he said about 3 to 4 hours. So I was going to do the finish about, you know, sometime in the evening. And start writing and writing and writing. And so he took like next day, like it's 4 o'clock in the morning. He kept going, writing, and I had to. Wow. We have to. The whole crew have to wait almost entirely the whole day. And so I was finally able to photograph like very early in the morning. So that was an experience.
Yeah, I bet the model was having a hard time with it.
Yeah. But
wow.
I like the image, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Hiroshi. Thank Jason, you. I hope you will save the chat. Hiroshi, you're getting lots of love in the chat. I think we just all appreciate you so much in our community and your beautiful and amazing work that never ceases to amaze and inspire. So thank you for taking
Thank you everyone for spending time with me.
Yes. All right, everyone. Good night. Thank you, Hiroshi.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
All right.